Have you ever wondered why certain desires scare you? Why, even when you are alone, do you feel ashamed of yourself? And why does the silence of the early morning seem more real than all the words spoken during the day? Carl Jung said, "What you do not bring to consciousness returns as fate." But what if your fate is being shaped by something you pretend does not exist? Something you repress so strongly that you no longer know if it is a desire or a fear? We all carry a version of ourselves that we do not show. A dark, pulsating, erotic version, but not in the banal sense of the word. A raw sexuality that has nothing to do with the easy pleasure of screens. It lives on the reverse side of our morality. It is not about what you desire, it is about what you cannot bear to desire. Perhaps you have never said it out loud. Perhaps you laughed to hide it. Perhaps you prayed to forget it. But that part of you did not disappear. It is alive and watching you. In this video, we are going to open a door that many avoid their entire lives, not to satisfy curiosity but to reconnect with what was exiled. We are going to explore your sexual shadow not as a pathology but as a map toward the most brutal self-knowledge that exists. And maybe, just maybe, at the end of this journey you will discover that what you feared most about yourself was also what most longed to be embraced. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. Do not rush. Because what we are about to touch is not a concept, it is you. It is the part you tried to leave in the darkness. There is a moment in the day, perhaps you know it well, when everything falls silent. The city sleeps, the phone is quiet, the world seems to forget you exist, but it is precisely in that instant when another presence awakens, a subtle sensation that has no name, a warmth that rises uninvited, a thought that appears without logic. It is not pornography, it is not love. It is not lack, it is something more primitive, more naked. It is a whisper, and it comes from within. You never told this to anyone, perhaps not even to yourself, but there is a part of your sexuality that has never been seen. It was shaped by silences, by invisible punishments, by censoring looks in childhood, by religions that promised salvation at the cost of your body. You learned early on that certain desires should not exist. Jung called that the sexual shadow, not because it is dirty or wrong, but because it was hidden, and everything that is hidden rots, not in its essence, but in its expression. You did not lose desire, you lost permission to feel it as it is. It is not strange for someone to tell me, I no longer feel desire, but when I listen carefully, what I hear behind it is something else. I lost contact with the part of me that was alive. That shadow is not made only of perversions. It is also made of tenderness that never had space, of caresses that were rejected, of fantasies no one wanted to hear. It is the unbearable mixture between what you desire and what you fear. It watches you between the lines. It provokes you when you see someone and feel your body react before your thoughts. It paralyzes you when contact is too sincere and sabotages you when you begin to love. Sometimes it appears as repulsion. You feel disgust towards something, but if you look closely, you will realize that this disgust is nothing more than fear in disguise. Fear of appearing weak, fear of liking it, fear of not being in control. Do you know why? Because your sexuality is not only about pleasure, it is about identity, about what moves you when no one is watching. It is the secret choreography between instinct and soul. And if you keep pretending that this part of you does not exist, it will not disappear. It will take revenge. It will appear in your most absurd dreams, in those behaviors you do not understand, in relationships that begin intensely and end in emptiness. It will manifest as compulsion or as apathy, as excesses or as dryness, as guilt or as cynicism. The truth is that this sexual shadow does not want to destroy you. It wants to be heard, but for that you will have to break the image you built of yourself, the good boy, the evolved woman, the enlightened being, because none of those masks survives the touch of the shadow, and it knows it. It does not want performance, it wants presence. Have you ever thought about how many times you pretended to be someone more acceptable to be loved? How many times you swallowed your truth because it was inappropriate? How many times you changed what was real for what was safe? Carl Jung said, sexuality is the expression of life energy in its most intense form, and that intensity is frightening. Because when it emerges, it does not ask for permission, it crosses through, it breaks, but there is beauty in that, there is liberation. When you finally stop running from your sexual shadow, you discover something you may not have even imagined, that there In that place you feared most to look, lives the most sincere part of you, and it is only asking you for one thing, to return home. You do not remember the exact moment when you began to be silent, but it exists. Perhaps it was a phrase thrown into the air by someone you admired, "That is wrong," or a harsh look in front of an innocence that was only trying to understand its own body, or perhaps it was silence, the total absence of conversation about what you felt, as if it were unspeakable. That is where it all begins, not in obvious trauma, but in what was missing, in the absence of naming, of affection, of listening. Carl Jung stated that the ego, in order to survive, learns to protect itself, and one of the most effective forms of defense is exile. Everything that seems too dangerous for the environment in which we live is pushed into the basement of the unconscious. But what you repress does not disappear, it only changes form, and when desire is buried, it does not become peace, it becomes a symptom. That vice you call bad habits, that apathy you justify as a phase, that restlessness you try to silence with distractions, with social media, with food, with anything that distances you from yourself. Shame is the prison that is built when desire collides with a moral wall, and the more moralization, the more fragmentation, because you begin to live in pieces, one piece that feels, another that judges what it feels, and another that tries to hide both. You become a performance, a kind of existential hologram. Externally, you are the adjusted human being. Internally, a volcano of unvalidated feelings that whisper in codes, that explode when you least expect it, that sabotage your most intimate relationships. Sometimes that volcano disguises itself as perfectionism, as extreme rationality, as coldness that you learn to call maturity. But the truth is simpler and more brutal. Are you tired of pretending that you do not feel what you feel? Jung said that the shadow is not something to be eliminated, but illuminated, and the sexual shadow is perhaps the most difficult to look at, because it carries not only instinct, but also guilt. And that guilt comes from generations, from cultures, from religions, from voices that said, to be loved you have to be clean. But no one truly loves what lives hidden, and the more you try to clean your desire, the more it twists, because sexuality does not accept censorship. It is the opposite of logic, it is the cry of the body, not the discourse of the mind, and that is where obsession is born. You are not obsessed with pleasure, you are obsessed with what you cannot feel, because what is not welcomed with awareness takes revenge through compulsion. It is the most perverse mechanism of the psyche. You disconnect from the original source of your desire and begin to seek substitutes that never satisfy. Disposable relationships, empty fantasies, stimuli that numb rather than awaken, because desire is now deformed. Have you ever stopped to think how many of your sexual decisions were actually desperate attempts to reconnect with yourself? How many times you gave yourself not out of freedom, but out of fear of feeling nothing? Shame creates a paradox. You desire but you hate yourself for desiring. You seek but you sabotage when you find. You touch but you withdraw while touching. And little by little you get used to living halfway, half alive, half turned off. That is fragmentation. And it does not begin in the adult. It is born in the boy or the girl who learned too early that the body was dangerous, that impulse was shameful, that surrender was weakness. That child still lives in you and does not need punishment. It needs to be heard without mockery, without theologies of guilt, without the spiritual arrogance of those who believe that desire is inferior to the soul, because in reality desire is the language of the soul. You simply forgot the language. Speaking that language again hurts. It demands that you stop running. It demands that you feel what you avoided for years. It demands that you face not desire itself, but the pain of having abandoned yourself to be accepted. The sexual shadow only becomes a monster when it is treated as an enemy. But if you sit with it, if you listen to its story, you will discover that it does not want to destroy your life. It wants to give it back to you. Perhaps that is why, on strange nights, you feel an emptiness that no distraction fills, because what is missing is not pleasure, it is integration. And the way back begins with a brutal question. What part of me did I have to kill to be loved? When you answer, something breaks, and in that breaking, healing begins. There are people who enter your life like a whisper, others arrive like a fire, and sometimes you do not understand why. Why that person, why that type, why that absurd chemistry that defies common sense, logic, even your own morality. Jung already warned us, everything that irritates or fascinates us about another reveals something about ourselves. Do you think you are in love with someone, but many times you are only trying to reconnect with that part of yourself that was denied? That is how projection begins. You look at the other, but you see yourself. You see the desire you repressed. You see the freedom you did not allow yourself. You see the boldness, the intensity, the surrender that you once had or never had, but always desired. Projection is a survival mechanism of the exiled soul. Since you cannot touch that within yourself, you try to touch it in the other, but that is not love, that is lack. You are not relating to the person, you are relating to the symbol that they represent for your shadow, and symbols do not correspond, they activate. That is why so many people enter intense and destructive relationships. It is not stupidity, it is the unconscious. It is the shadow saying, there is something of mine there, I need to return. The problem is that no one can stand being a mirror all the time, and when the reflection shows too much, you break, you end, you run away, you sabotage. The duality sets in. You want but you fear wanting. You get close but you pull away. You seduce but you avoid surrendering. You become 2.1 who loves, another who watches over love, and thus double lives are born. On the surface you are that functional, sensible, resolved person, but between the lines there is an organized chaos, fantasy, repression, impulse, guilt, desire, escape, a secret dance between what you show and what you really feel. How many times have you gotten involved with someone who awakened your most intense instincts and then you felt repulsion? Not because of that person, but because they saw too much. They saw that which you hide even from yourself. That's why relationships based on projection are so unstable. They are not between two people, they are between an ego and a mirror, and the mirror sooner or later breaks. But there is another type of projection, more subtle, more corrosive, the one that is not passion but judgment. You recognize that person who deeply bothers you, the one who seems too vulgar or too free or too sensual. Observe them closely. Maybe they are only expressing what you have always wanted to live but were forbidden to feel. That person is not your enemy. They are the messenger of your shadow. Jung said that the unconscious communicates through symbols, and there is no symbol more profound than desire. That which attracts you without reason, that which excites you and scares you, that which you judge in others, but if you were honest you would recognize in yourself. And if you do not accept that shadow, it does not disappear. It shifts, it projects, it materializes in your loves, in your obsessions, in your criticisms. You begin to look in others for what you lost in yourself. But that is unfair because no one was born to carry the weight of your repression. The truth is that you want someone who frees you, but you are terrified of being seen, because being truly seen in the essence of your desire is a risk. It is to undress not the body, but the character. And the character is comfortable. It is accepted. It is safe. But it is false. How many relationships have you destroyed out of fear of feeling too much? How many times have you pushed someone away because what you had exposed you to yourself? How many times have you hidden behind cynicism or sarcasm or coldness just to avoid facing the vulnerability of desiring with an open heart? The sexual shadow, when it is not embraced, destroys from within and seduces from the outside. You become desirable but inaccessible, present but absent. You touch, you do not let yourself be touched. And there the dilemma arises. You want intensity, but you fear the abyss. You want connection, but you fear being revealed. You want pleasure, but you fear losing control. So you live a double life, and you believe that is balance. But balance is not that. Balance is when desire and consciousness can coexist, when you no longer need to hide in anyone nor project yourself onto anyone, when you look at yourself in the mirror and do not see only what the world expects but also that which the world never knew and yet is you. Integration begins when you stop looking in others for what you need to rediscover in yourself. And the question that remains is, who in your life was a mirror of your shadow? Who did you love? Not for what they were, but for what they represented. And whom did you judge for touching something that you could never be? When you answer with brutal honesty, the projection dissolves and instead of the mirror, the encounter is born. You spent your life trying to be someone acceptable, someone who does not make others uncomfortable, someone who feels the right things. and in that you left entire parts of yourself along the way, parts that today call to you with a discomfort that you do not know how to name. That is what Jung spoke of when he said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. It is not about transcending desire, it is about going through it. The sacred is not outside of it, it is at the center. But to get there requires courage. Courage to come into contact with your own truth, not the one you show on social media or in well-constructed speeches, but the truth that still trembles within you. Have you realized how exhausting it is to live fragmented, having to filter every thought, control every impulse, smile when you wanted to scream, pretend stability when inside everything is collapsing? That exhaustion is not physical, it is existential. It is the body saying, "You forgot about me." And in that forgetting you buried more than desires. You buried the energy that made you feel, live, vibrate, create. Carl Jung said that repressing sexuality not only affects pleasure, it affects the soul. Because sexual energy is symbolic, it is the archetypal fire of life wanting to flow through you. When that energy is silenced, everything empties, creativity withers, relationships grow cold, spirituality becomes a ritual without essence, and life becomes maintenance. You wake up, do what you have to do, smile so as not to worry anyone, and go to sleep with a void that no achievement manages to fill. But there is another path, and it begins with an almost unthinkable gesture, sitting with your shadow. Not to obey it, but to listen to it, understand where it comes from, what it needs to say, what was left voiceless for so long. Maybe it speaks of a childhood, where desire became danger. Maybe it brings memories you swore to forget. Maybe it reveals that what you called freedom was only a way of escaping, or that what you called maturity was only anesthesia. And in that moment something changes, because when the shadow is heard it transforms. It stops being impulse and becomes a message. It stops being compulsion and becomes consciousness. It stops dominating you and begins to guide you. It is not about surrendering to every desire, but about recognizing what it symbolizes. What part of you wants to act there? What truth is being censored? What need is not being attended to? Integration is not magical. It is painful. It is slow. It is visceral, because it demands that you grieve the versions of yourself that you created to survive, and that you finally begin to live. You are going to feel fear. You are going to want to return to the safe zone of denial. But if you have the courage to continue, you are going to find something you have never had before. Wholeness, not perfection, but presence. The freedom to feel without apologizing, to desire without shame, to love without fragmenting yourself. It is in that state where the sexual energy once exiled returns as vital force, no longer as a dirty secret, but as a conscious creative flame, aligned with your entire being. You begin to choose relationships that touch your soul, to create things you did not dare before, to feel pleasure without guilt, to say yes with your whole body and to say no with clarity and firmness, because now you know who you are. The sexual shadow stops being an enemy and becomes an ally. It is the guardian of your inner fire, and it has always been there waiting for the day when you would stop ignoring it and say, "I am ready," ready to stop being half, ready to stop repeating patterns that you do not understand, ready to stop hiding what you feel, ready to be whole. And when that moment arrives, you realize that it was never about controlling desire. It was always about honoring your humanity. You made it this far, and that alone already says a lot. Maybe you felt exposed or uncomfortable or deeply recognized. Maybe you remembered something you have never told anyone. Or maybe for the first time you felt like listening to yourself without censorship. What you do now is your decision. You can continue pretending that your shadow is just a detour. You can return to the surface of life, where everything is pretty, functional and empty. Or you can finally accept that the most honest part of you was always in the darkness, waiting, observing, asking for a place, and that integrating it is not an act of weakness, it is an act of courage, because only someone who is already tired of dividing themselves is capable of becoming whole. Carl Jung gave us formulas, he gave us mirrors, and now you know where to look. I remember a dawn in which I woke up with my heart racing, for no reason, or rather for all those reasons I did not want to admit. I dreamed of something that exposed me too much, not sexually but emotionally. I woke up feeling ashamed of myself. At that time I thought, what is wrong with me? Today I understand it. It was just my shadow knocking on the door. It took me years to have the courage to open it, and when I did not find a monster. I found a child, the one I once was, waiting to be recognized. That is why I created this space, not to teach, but to remind you of something that deep down you already know. You are not alone, and there is nothing wrong with feeling deeply. If this video touched some wound in you, just remember that pain is not the end. It is the beginning of your return home. If you made it this far and you did not subscribe to the channel, seriously, you went through the forest of your psyche. You looked at your desire with a trembling flashlight in your hand, and you leave without leaving a like. Click like, subscribe, and comment below. I am ready to look at myself, or my shadow no longer screams alone, or make something better up. But comment, because yes, I do read. Those videos that are appearing on the screen now are doors. But be careful, not every door wants to be opened, and some have no return. See you there or in the next dawn when your shadow decides that it has been ignored for too long.